Welcome to African History Brief, the snapshots of a continent's past, a journey through time that brings to light the rich and diverse tapestry of Africa's history. From the ancient civilizations of the Nile Valley to the bustling trade centers of Timbuktu, Africa's past is filled with stories of innovation, resilience, and cultural richness. We'll explore the rise and fall of empires, the spread of religions, and the enduring traditions that have shaped societies across the continent. In this series, we'll delve into pivotal moments such as the resistance movements during colonial times, where communities stood firm against foreign domination, asserting their right to self-determination. So, whether you're a history enthusiast or new to African studies, join us as we uncover the stories that have shaped Africa's past and continue to influence its present and future. Uncovering Africa's Ancient Civilizations. An introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first Hot Off the Press broadcast of African History Briefs, your go-to series for all things ancient, epic, and unapologetically African. Today, we're kicking things off with a quick tour of Africa's ancient civilizations, the historical heavyweights who built cities, created trade networks, and basically proved that pre-colonial does not mean prehistoric. But first, what is a civilization anyway? No, it's not just people who use forks or queue politely. A civilization is a complex society with government systems, writings, cities, social classes, art, trade, and the all-important technology. Think early engineers before it was cool. They often popped up near rivers because even ancient people knew there's no progress without snacks, water, and reliable transport. Take ancient Egypt along the Nile, where pharaohs ruled, pyramids pierced the sky, and eyeliner was both fashionable and spiritual. Or Mesopotamia, not African, but a neighbor that figured out writing while the rest of us were still doodling in sand. But rivers weren't the only game in town. Some civilizations said, no thanks water, will build greatness inland. Case in point, Great Zimbabwe with its iconic stone walls and the Inca Empire, though that one's a continent away, it proves the point. Back to Africa, the continent was absolutely stacked with greatness. We're talking about Egypt, yes, but also Kush, the power next door, Carthage, famous for Hannibal, elephants, and annoying the Romans, Aksum, trading with India, and Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, West African dynasty is so rich in gold that Europe had trust issues for centuries. Don't forget Great Zimbabwe and Mapungubwe, who built incredible cities without a single pyramid in sight, and the No culture, who were making terracotta sculptures while parts of Europe were still trying to invent roads. So buckle up. This was just a teaser. We'll be back with deeper dives into each of these mind-blowing civilizations, how they rose and what they achieved. So grab your map, your curiosity, and maybe a snack, because we're about to travel across thousands of years of epic African history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell your cousin who still thinks Africa started in 1960. See you in the next episode.
Welcome to ancient Egypt, where the sun never sets on the drama and the eyeliner. Seriously, we built one of the greatest civilizations in history, while looking like runway models in a sandstorm. Let's talk pyramids first. They were massive tombs for our pharaohs, but also proof that we ancient Egyptians took overachiever to a whole new level. Hey, should we build a small tomb for the king? No, let's make a 400-foot triangle that still confuses modern engineers. And voila, the Great Pyramid, the world's oldest flex. Then there's the Nile River, Egypt's personal all-you-can-grow buffet. Every year it flooded just enough to make farming easy. No irrigation drama, no crop fails. Just set your calendar to flood season and let nature do the work. Honestly, the Nile was the ultimate team player. Hieroglyphs? A writing system of tiny drawings. Because why use 26 letters when you can carve an entire zoo into stone? Want to say, hi, Mum? That's a bird, a squiggly line, and maybe a sun. Took forever to write a grocery list. And of course, we can't forget the pharaohs. Living gods with golden bling, scepters, and enough ceremonial headwear to start their own fashion label. If you were a pharaoh, your to-do list included rule Egypt check, build a pyramid check, look fabulous doing it check. Let's not ignore our obsession with the afterlife. We packed for death like it was a 5-star vacation. Jewelry, snacks, servants, even pets. We were like, you can take it with you. So next time you're overwhelmed by life, remember, the Egyptians built empires, invented calendars, and still had time for cat worship. Your to-do list can wait 5 minutes.
Thank you for your time and telling us so much about your home city. As for the audience, make sure to subscribe or follow to keep up with our amazing African history briefs. See you next time.
Let's get one thing straight. Egypt was not the only ancient flex in northeast Africa. Just south of the pyramids and pharaohs you learned about in school was a kingdom so cool, so golden, and so ironclad that even the Egyptians were like, wait, who's that stealing our throne? Answer, Kush. Kush was located in what is now modern-day Sudan, right along the Nile. This region, once known as Nubia, was packed with gold, ivory, and iron, making it both wealthy and powerful. Like Egypt, Kush was a full-blown civilization. While our neighbours up north were busy perfecting eyeliner and building tourism landmarks, we Kushites were trading gold, crafting iron weapons, and minding our business. Until we decided to take over Egypt. Around 750 BCE, King Pi of Kush looked at Egypt and said, "You look like you need help." Then, boom, he conquered it. That's right. We didn't just admire pyramids, we ruled the place that built them. This kicked off Egypt's 25th dynasty, known as the Black Pharaohs era. Kushite kings brought back old-school traditions, restored temples, and wore crowns that basically said royalty with Nubian flair. Fast forward and meet me, Queen Amanirenas. Yes, I was a one-eyed warrior queen who stared down the Roman Empire, fought them off, and then told Emperor Augustus, "We'll talk peace, but only on my terms." Now, here are some Kushite facts your history teacher probably skipped. We've got more pyramids than Egypt, steeper, smaller, and unapologetically Kushite. While others were still figuring out bread, we were smelting iron like pros. Think Marvel Universe, but with ancient tech and more camels. Our capital, Meroe, became a major iron exporting hub, with trade links across Africa and the Mediterranean. Sure, Egypt influenced us, but we had our own language, Meroitic, our own gods, our own style, and we didn't need validation from anyone. So, why haven't you heard more about Kush? Because colonialism, museum politics, and centuries of Africa only had Egypt nonsense. But now, you know better. Next time someone drops a fun fact about pharaohs or pyramids, just lean in and say, "Sure, but have you heard of Kush?"
And that wraps up our royal visit with Queen Amanirenas. Thank you, Your Majesty, for that powerful glimpse into the legacy of Kush. If you enjoyed this episode of African Historical Briefs, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a moment of history brought to life. See you next week for another untold story from the heart of Africa's past.
Let's set the scene. It's the 9th century BCE, and a bunch of clever Phoenicians sail west from Tyre in present-day Lebanon, land on the North African coast, and go, "Yup, this will do." They named the new settlement Kot Adasht, meaning new city, which will later become known as Carthage, where modern-day Tunisia now lies. Carthage wasn't about building pyramids like our neighbors in Egypt and Kush. No. Carthage was all about the money. Originally a small outpost for trade, Carthage quickly grew in wealth and influence due to its strategic location and the maritime savvy of its people. The Carthaginians were brilliant sailors, shipbuilders, and traders. They established a commercial empire stretching from North Africa to Spain, Sardinia, and Sicily, and even ventured beyond the Strait of Gibraltar. The people of Carthage turned trade into an art form, tin from Britain, silver from Spain. Absolutely. Purple dye that screamed, "I'm rich." If Amazon existed then, Carthage would have owned it. But with great wealth comes great competition. Enter Rome, mumbling, "Who said you could be rich and powerful?" And thus began the Punic Wars, aka 3 blockbuster sequels, in which Carthage and Rome tried to destroy each other over trade routes and pride. This is where Hannibal, came in. You might have heard of me, the man, the myth, who thought it would be a fun idea to take elephants over the Alps to surprise Rome. Imagine that. Hey, is that a war elephant in the snow? Rome wasn't laughing for a while. Spoiler alert. After the Third Punic War, Rome eventually wins. In 146 BCE, they totally overreact as Romans do and flatten Carthage. No more competition, they say, probably while high-fiving over the ruins. Legend says they salted the earth so nothing would grow, but that's probably just ancient PR. Still, Carthage left behind more than just ashes. We produced genius traders, fearless warriors, and some truly dramatic history.
And there you have it, the rise, the roar, and the remarkable legacy of ancient Carthage. From fearless traders to war elephants in the snow, they didn't just make history, and they charged through it. Thanks for journeying through the past with us. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring. When we talk about ancient civilizations, it's always Egypt this, Rome that, Greece with the philosophy. Meanwhile, Axum is sitting in the back like, hello, I invented international trade, Christianity, and 20-meter stone skyscrapers. Give me some credit. So buckle up. Today, we're heading to ancient East Africa to meet the kingdom of Axum, an empire with gold in its pockets, God on its side, and absolutely no time for being left out of your history textbook. But where in the world was Axum? Axum, aka Axum if you're fancy, was chilling in what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea, right next to the Red Sea. Basically, they had beachfront property before it was cool. Because of this prime location, they were like the Dubai of the ancient world, except with more camels and fewer skyscrapers. Axum was the plug for luxury goods. They controlled trade between Africa, Arabia, India, and even the Roman Empire, which means your favorite Roman senator probably sipped his wine from an Axum-imported goblet while wearing silk that passed through their hands. Axum didn't just trade, they minted their own coins. That's right, while some civilizations were out here carving stuff into rocks and hoping someone would understand, Axum was like, here, take this gold coin with my face on it. You're welcome. They were the first African empire to mint gold, silver, and bronze coins. The coins had Greek on them, because why not flex your multilingualism while flaunting your wealth? One Greek historian even named Axum one of the four greatest powers of the world at the time. That's right, Axum, Rome, Persia, and China were the Beyoncé, Rihanna, Taylor, and Adele of the 3rd century. Another very interesting fact about Axum is that it was one of the first Christian nations in the world. This was attributed to King Ezana, who in the 4th century adopted the religion of Christianity to the kingdom of Axum. And get this, according to legend, Axum is the final resting place of the Ark of the Covenant. You know, that super powerful gold chest from the Bible and Indiana Jones. Supposedly, it's locked away in a church in Axum, guarded by a monk who never leaves the compound and definitely doesn't let you see it. Respect the mystery. Let's talk giant obelisks. Axumites didn't believe in doing things halfway. Instead of modest gravestones, they carved massive stone obelisks out of single blocks of granite, some as tall as a 7-story building. One of the most famous stelae, aka obelisks, was borrowed by Italy in 1937 during their brief and unwanted visit, but it was finally returned in 2005 because even colonial powers eventually learn not to steal giant rocks. Like all great empires, Axum eventually ran into trouble. Trade routes shifted, thanks to the rise of Islam, and the party started winding down. Climate change, soil exhaustion, and internal drama didn't help. By the 10th century, Axum had faded politically, but the culture, oh, it stayed strong. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the Ge'ez language, and a long tradition of resistance and pride still trace their roots back to Axum. So, why should you care about Axum and be impressed? They ran trade routes before Uber Eats was a thought. They minted coins before half of Europe knew what money was. They adopted Christianity while others were still burning incense for Jupiter. And they left behind a legacy of power, faith, and engineering genius that shaped Ethiopia and inspired generations. This week, we're zooming in on West Africa, where one ancient civilization said, "Who needs pyramids when you've got clay and creativity?" Meet the Nok civilization, the quiet legends of central Nigeria who were doing their thing from around 1500 BCE to 200 CE, long before anyone had invented the phrase, ancient Egypt is so cool. Now, the Nok didn't leave behind scrolls, libraries, or a sphinx. What they did leave behind? Sculptures. Big, bold, expressive, terracotta masterpieces that look like something between a fashion runway, a spiritual ceremony, and a really intense staring contest. We're talking elongated bodies, elaborate hairdos, and eyes so wide they could see into your soul. These weren't just pots and pans. These were full-on clay celebrities, some sitting, some standing, some rocking jewelry like they were headed to the Met Gala of the Iron Age. And speaking of iron, yes, they were working with that too. While folks in Europe were still poking around with bronze, the Nok were smelting iron ore, crafting tools, weapons, and probably saying, "Catch up, world." So how did the modern world stumble upon these ancient overachievers? Completely by accident, of course. In the 1920s, some tin miners were digging around Nigeria's Jos Plateau, probably just hoping to get paid, when boom, they hit a terracotta head. Not what you expect to find while trying to mine tin, but hey, history happens. Fast forward a few decades, and archaeologists are like, wait, who were these people? And that's how the Nok went from buried mystery to archaeological rock stars. Unfortunately, their story also has a sad twist. Looting. A lot of Nok sites were robbed blind before experts could study them. So while we know they farmed, lived in villages, and possibly had trading systems, there's still a whole lot we don't know, because too many artifacts got snatched up and sold off. But here's why Nok still matters. They remind us that Africa has layers of ancient genius that rarely make the school curriculum. They show us that African societies were complex, creative, and making serious cultural waves, no colonial help required. Their art screams vision, their ironwork whispers innovation, and the fact that we're still digging them up tells us Africa's story is still unfolding. So next time someone acts like African history started with colonization, kindly point them toward a Nok sculpture and let the wide-eyed terracotta stare do the talking. Let's take another journey back in time, no passport required, to West Africa, where three mighty empires once ruled the land: Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. Like the earlier Nok civilization, all three were based in West Africa and shared a habit of building on the strengths of those who came before them. First up, the Ghana Empire. Nope, not modern Ghana. That came much later. The ancient Ghana Empire, known to its own people as Ouagadougou, rose to power around the 6th or 7th century CE in what is today southeastern Mauritania and western Mali. By the 9th century, it had become a heavyweight in trade, politics, and power. At its peak, it was one of the richest empires in the region, and the reason can be summed up in two words: gold and salt. You see, Ghana had the perfect location. It sat smack in the middle of the trade routes, connecting the gold mines of the south with the Saharan salt routes in the north. Caravans of camels carrying salt cloth and other goods arrived from North Africa, and Ghana exported back gold, ivory, and enslaved people. The kings of Ghana were savvy. They taxed every item passing through, like ancient customs officers with serious authority. And it didn't stop there. The rulers even kept a monopoly on gold nuggets. Ordinary folks could only trade gold dust. If you had a nugget, hand it over. That power move helped the king maintain both prestige and control over the economy. Speaking of kings, the title Ghana actually meant warrior king. The ruler wasn't just a political leader, but a religious and military figure too. According to the 11th century Arab chronicler al-Bakri, the king lived in luxury, surrounded by gold, officials, and a strong army. The capital moved a few times, but by the 11th century, it was likely located in Kumbi Saleh, not far from today's Bamako in Mali. Culturally, Ghana was a mix. It started as an animist society, worshipping ancestors and nature, but Islam slowly made its way in via trade. Many merchants and officials converted, while the royal court held on to traditional beliefs, creating a rich blend of religion and culture that later empires would carry forward. But greatness has its limits. By the late 11th century, Almoravid invaders from North Africa began to disrupt Ghana's trade and stability. They took the capital in 1076, and even though their rule didn't last long, the damage was done. Over time, internal divisions and environmental changes led to Ghana's decline. By 1240, it was absorbed into the rising Mali Empire, led by the legendary Sundiata Keita. Still, Ghana's story is no footnote. It laid the groundwork for West Africa's golden age, literally. It reminds us that African civilizations were thriving long before colonialism, with rich cultures, complex governments, and global trade networks. Next stop, the Mali Empire and the city of scholarly. Welcome back to our historical adventure across West Africa. After Ghana dropped the mic, the next empire to take the stage was Mali, and trust me, this one came in with drums, dancers, and a whole lot of gold. The Mali Empire kicked off in the 13th century, led by the original comeback kid, Sundiata Keita. Born unable to walk and later exiled, Sundiata pulled off the medieval version of "started from the bottom, now we're here" when he defeated the powerful Soso kingdom at the Battle of Kyrene in 1235. That battle wasn't just a win, it was the beginning of one of the greatest empires in African history. Talk about a plot twist. Now let's talk business. Mali was sitting on so much gold, they basically had the monopoly board, the dice, and all the hotels. Add control of trans-Saharan trade routes, and you get an economic powerhouse. Caravans carrying salt, books, and fancy North African fabrics passed through Mali's cities and left with gold, ivory, and stories to tell. One city stood out, Timbuktu. Far from being a dusty legend, Timbuktu was basically the Harvard of the desert. Scholars, students, and scribes flocked to its universities and manuscript libraries, discussing everything from astronomy to theology, probably over cups of spicy tea. But no Mali story is complete without Mansa Musa, the man, the myth, the gold-laden legend. When Musa went on pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, he didn't just pack snacks, he brought thousands of attendants, 100 camels, and so much gold, he accidentally crashed the Egyptian economy. Imagine being so rich your vacation causes inflation. But Musa wasn't just showing off. He used his wealth to build schools, mosques, and libraries, and turned Mali into a glowing center of Islamic learning and global prestige. He literally put Mali on the map. European cartographers started scribbling Mali and drawing golden kings almost immediately. Of course, empires rise and fall. After Musa's reign, Mali faced succession drama, internal conflict, and external threats, because apparently even medieval empires weren't safe from bad leadership and noisy neighbors. By the late 15th century, a new empire, Songhai, was flexing its muscles, but Mali left footprints all over history. It showed the world that Africa had great cities, global trade, deep scholarship, and wealth so vast it dazzled empires across continents. Next up, the Songhai Empire, where everything got bigger, including the drama. When the Mali Empire was at its peak, it seemed unbeatable, a golden land of wealth, learning, and trade. But as history loves to remind us, empires are like celebrities. They shine bright, but eventually someone younger, hungrier, and just as ambitious steps into the spotlight. Enter the Songhai Empire. And just so we're clear from the start, yes, Songhai rose from Mali's shadow. Think of it as Mali's younger cousin who went to the gym, learned a few moves, and came back ready to run the show. By the 1400s, Mali was starting to lose its sparkle. Internal conflicts, raids from neighbors, and shifting trade routes all chipped away at its power. In the city of Gao, one of Mali's important outposts along the Niger River, the local rulers saw their chance. Under Sunni Ali, who ruled from 1464-1492, Songhai broke free from Mali's weakening control and began gobbling up territory like a very determined game of Risk. Sunni Ali wasn't just expanding for fun, he understood that controlling the Niger River meant controlling trade, and controlling trade meant controlling everything. He conquered Timbuktu and Djenné, two of Mali's prized cities, bringing them under Songhai's rule. Traders, scholars, and artisans now worked under a new boss, and business was booming. But Sunni Ali wasn't winning every popularity contest. Muslim scholars in Timbuktu side-eyed him for mixing Islam with traditional African beliefs. Still, no one could deny he was building the foundations for what would become West Africa's largest empire. When Sunni Ali passed away, his general Askia Muhammad, better known as Askia the Great, pulled off a little leadership shuffle in 1493 and took the throne. Askia, unlike his predecessor, was less sword in hand and more pen behind the ear. He reorganized the empire into provinces with governors, fixed the tax system, and turned Timbuktu into a scholarship supernova. He even went on a pilgrimage to Mecca that nearly matched Mansa Musa's for style, though he wasn't out here tossing gold at strangers quite as recklessly. Under Askia, Songhai stretched from the Atlantic Ocean deep into the Sahara, ruling over the gold-salt trade and influencing politics across the region. caravans brought not only goods but also ideas, making Songhai a buzzing hub of economy and intellect in the 15th and 16th centuries. But, as with Mali before it, the Golden Age didn't last forever. Civil wars, rebellions, and the Moroccan invasion of 1591, armed with muskets which Songhai did not have, shattered the empire's military strength. Songhai splintered into smaller states, closing the curtain on West Africa's imperial era. Songhai's story proves that African history is a cycle of rise, peak, reinvention, and repeat. It's about how trade, geography, and leadership can create massive civilizations, and how quickly shifting power can change the whole game and reshape an entire region. From Mali's gold to Songhai's glory, West Africa's history isn't just rich, it's downright epic. And through it all, the Niger River is the silent witness to it all. Forget skyscrapers, glass towers, and flashy look-at-me architecture. In the 11th century, the people of the Zimbabwe civilization were already building stone cities so impressive that future Europeans would scratch their heads and go, "Wait, Africans built this?" Yes, Karen, Africans built this. No alien architects involved. Welcome to Great Zimbabwe, the medieval city that was basically the penthouse suite of southern Africa. It wasn't just a city, it was a statement. We've got gold, we've got cows, and we've got walls so fancy we don't even bother with cement. That's right, the walls of Great Zimbabwe were built entirely without mortar, and they're still standing centuries later. Meanwhile, my IKEA bookshelf lasted 6 months before collapsing under the weight of 2 books. At its peak, Great Zimbabwe was the political and trading capital of a kingdom so rich that merchants from as far away as China and Persia came sniffing around for business. Gold and ivory flowed out, beads, porcelain, and prestige flowed in. Imagine Amazon Prime, but instead of delivery vans, you had long-distance trade caravans and ships. The architecture, stunning. The great enclosure's curved stone walls could make a Renaissance architect weep. The conical tower, a massive stone structure with no door, was either a royal granary, a symbol of power, or possibly just a very fancy flex saying, "Our ruler is so rich, he builds giant structures just because he can." And the name Zimbabwe is derived from the Shona phrase Zimba Zimbabwe and translates to houses of stone or stone buildings, which makes sense because when your city is made entirely out of epic stone walls, you don't exactly call it house of wood that burns easily. Sadly, by the 15th century, Great Zimbabwe's glory days faded, probably due to overgrazing, dwindling resources, or the residents finally getting tired of tourists asking, "But seriously, who really built this?" Today, the ruins still stand proud, mysterious, and serving as Zimbabwe's national symbol. So next time someone doubts Africa's history of grandeur, just point them to Great Zimbabwe and say, "Stone doesn't lie."